Tensions ran high in Washington, D.C. yesterday, as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with U.S. leadership at the White House. In an unprecedented gathering, Zelensky sat down with U.S. President Donald Trump, in his return to the Oval Office, and Vice President J.D. Vance to discuss the ongoing war in Ukraine. The high-stakes meeting, meant to solidify cooperation, swiftly escalated into a fiery confrontation. What began as a diplomatic discussion about ending Russia's invasion turned into a tense exchange, one that observers describe as a contentious and heated clash between allies. This report covers the key topics on the agenda, the explosive quotes from the Oval Office showdown, the aftermath and global reactions, and an analysis of what this encounter could mean for international politics going forward. The primary focus of the trilateral meeting was Russia's war in Ukraine and how to bring the conflict to an end. President Zelensky arrived in Washington seeking assurances of continued U.S. support against Russian aggression, and to discuss a potential new economic agreement. According to officials, one item on the agenda was a proposed U.S.-Ukraine minerals deal aimed at helping Ukraine rebuild and recoup the U.S. for the assistance it's given to Ukraine. In return, the American side, led by President Trump and VP Vance, pressed Zelensky to embrace diplomatic efforts with Russia and consider a ceasefire, signaling a desire for peace negotiations. Both Trump and Vance emphasized an America-first approach, suggesting that European allies and Ukraine should shoulder more of the burden. They reportedly questioned the billions in U.S. aid already sent to Kiev and wanted to ensure American interests were being served. At one point, U.S. officials accused Zelensky of showing insufficient gratitude for past aid, hinting that Washington felt ungrateful vibes from Kiev. Zelensky, for his part, reiterated that Ukraine is fighting for its survival and for democratic values, urging that now is not the time to relax pressure on the Kremlin. He reminded the Americans of Russia's track record of violating agreements, an allusion to previous broken ceasefires, to argue that any peace deal without solid guarantees could backfire. As discussions progressed, a routine meeting turned combative in front of press cameras. The turning point came when President Zelensky firmly cautioned against trusting Moscow. He cited Russia's past breaches of peace deals, such as a 2019 ceasefire that Russia violated, and passionately underscored the Kremlin's history of unreliability. This frank reminder did not sit well with the American side. Vice President Vance abruptly cut in, scolding Zelensky in unusually sharp terms. "I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media," Vance snapped. The remark stunned onlookers and visibly startled Zelensky, setting the stage for a heated back and forth. President Trump then doubled down on the tough talk. In a blunt admonishment, Trump told the Ukrainian leader that Ukraine's fortunes hinged on U.S. support. "You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us," Trump declared, emphasizing that American aid is a lifeline for Kiev. According to reporters in the room, Trump's tone was stern and unapologetic. Zelensky, maintaining his composure, pushed back diplomatically. He insisted that Ukraine is grateful for U.S. help. "I say thank you to the American people," Zelensky interjected, but he argued that simply calling for a truce without safeguards would not secure a real peace. "Yes, of course I want to stop the war," Zelensky said, "but only with guarantees." He urged his American counterparts to understand why Ukrainians are wary of any ceasefire. "Ask our people about the ceasefire, what do they think?" Zelensky noted, implying that most Ukrainians distrust promises from Moscow without concrete security guarantees. The Oval Office clash grew so intense that planned events were derailed. A joint press conference that had been scheduled for after the meeting was abruptly canceled. The seats prepared for Ukrainian journalists were left empty in the White House briefing room. Moreover, the much-touted U.S.-Ukraine minerals agreement, which Zelensky came to sign, was put on hold. White House officials later confirmed that after this war of words, the deal was not signed and its future remains uncertain. Zelensky departed the Oval Office without the tangible victories he hoped for, and the tense exchange became the top headline around the world. In Washington's political circles, fallout was immediate. Within hours, lawmakers and former officials from both parties weighed in on the extraordinary meeting. Critics of President Trump's approach, including some from his own Republican camp, voiced alarm at how a U.S. ally was treated. John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, blasted his old boss for the spectacle, saying Trump and Vance have declared themselves to be on Russia's side in the war. Bolton called the confrontation a catastrophic mistake for America's national security, arguing that most Americans in both parties do not support such an approach. Another Trump administration alum, H.R. McMaster, expressed disbelief, calling it impossible to understand why Trump and Vance seemed to pressure Zelensky while coddling Putin, the very aggressor who unleashed this war. Democrats were uniformly scathing. Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire condemned the outrageous display in the Oval Office as disgraceful and downright un-American, accusing Trump of siding with a murderous thug, Putin, over our democratic ally, Ukraine. Another prominent Democrat, Senator Chris Murphy, lambasted the meeting as an utter embarrassment for America. Across cable news and editorial pages, many U.S. commentators echoed these sentiments, describing the incident as a shocking public spat between supposed allies and a low point for American global leadership. Not everyone in the U.S. was critical, however. Trump's allies and supporters quickly rallied to defend him and Vice President Vance. Some Republican figures praised the confrontation as a display of tough love and American strength. In fact, a number of officials in the administration publicly lauded Trump's stance as a sign that he puts American interests first. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was among those who hailed Trump's Oval Office performance, characterizing it as a fierce defense of the American people in the face of foreign demands. Trump's close friend, Senator Lindsey Graham, normally a staunch supporter of Ukraine, took an unusual angle, reportedly telling the president that the fiery meeting was possibly the best television he'd ever seen. "I think that Moscow is more afraid than ever," Graham quipped, suggesting that the spectacle might intimidate Russia. Even tech billionaire turned government advisor Elon Musk weighed in, posting a series of American flag emojis on social media, an apparent sign of approval. These reactions underscored the deep divide in U.S. politics, where one side saw a diplomatic disaster, the other saw a leader standing up for his country's priorities. Yesterday's explosive meeting may prove to be a watershed moment in the Ukraine war and in U.S. foreign policy. In the immediate term, the clash has laid bare the differing priorities between Kyiv and the new Trump administration. President Trump's approach marks a sharp pivot from the previous U.S. stance of unequivocal support for Ukraine. In fact, analysts note that the Oval Office fireworks illustrate just how drastically the United States' approach to the Ukraine war has shifted since Trump returned to power. The U.S. government is now visibly more skeptical of endless military aid and is pushing Ukraine to consider negotiations, a stance that could alter the course of diplomatic efforts to end the conflict. One major implication is the strain on U.S.-Ukraine relations. The public dressing down of President Zelensky is likely to sow mistrust between Kyiv and Washington. If Ukraine perceives that U.S. support is becoming conditional or lukewarm, Zelensky's government may need to recalibrate its strategy. The collapse of the proposed minerals deal, for instance, signals that economic cooperation could suffer if political relations remain frosty. Moving forward, Ukraine might look even more to European partners and other allies to fill any gaps left by a hesitant Washington. European nations, for their part, are already debating how to respond if the U.S. pulls back. There is talk in EU capitals of increasing defense budgets and using frozen Russian assets to help fund Ukraine's resistance. Europe's swift messages of support after the meeting indicate a resolve to not let Ukraine stand alone, even if transatlantic politics get complicated. For American politics, the incident could have ripple effects at home. Trump's confrontational handling of Zelensky drew applause from his base and some isolationist wings of the Republican Party, but it alarmed establishment Republicans and Democrats who fear the U.S. might abandon a Democratic ally. This could lead to fierce debates in Congress over funding for Ukraine's defense. Any future aid packages may face even tougher scrutiny and partisan division. Additionally, U.S. allies elsewhere will be watching closely. Allies in Asia, like Taiwan or South Korea, might worry what this America First posture means for them, while adversaries could feel emboldened if they sense Washington distancing itself from its friends. The diplomatic fallout is also noteworthy. Foreign leaders like Macron have hinted that doing diplomacy reality TV style, essentially negotiating in public with theatrics, is perilous. The Oval Office spat underscores that traditional behind-closed-doors diplomacy has given way to unusually public confrontation, which can carry risks. As one foreign policy analysis put it, such episodes are a reminder that international diplomacy was never meant to be carried out in front of billions of eyes. The concern is that these public clashes could harden positions on all sides, making compromise more difficult in an already deadly war. On the flip side, some argue that Trump's tough approach might jolt diplomatic efforts for better or worse. Supporters claim that by pressuring Zelensky so bluntly, the US is forcing all parties to reckon with hard truths and seek an endgame to the war. It's conceivable that this meeting could spur new negotiations, perhaps through back channels, as Ukraine seeks to secure the guarantees it needs and the US seeks to limit its commitments. However, any such talks would require rebuilding trust. The optics of the White House showdown have undoubtedly raised Moscow's hopes, Kiev's anxieties, and Europe's determination. A complex mix that diplomats will have to navigate in the coming months. In summary, the dramatic meeting between President Zelensky, President Trump, and Vice President Vance at the White House has become a global talking point. What was intended as a high-level strategy session ended up as a fiery public dispute, laying bare the rifts in how allies view the path to peace in Ukraine. We've covered the key issues discussed, from war strategy to aid and diplomacy, and heard the astonishing war of words that took place in the Oval Office, in the participants' own voices. The immediate aftermath saw a flood of reactions, outrage, and support in Washington's political circles, strong backing for Zelensky from European and international leaders, blatant satisfaction from Russia, and steadfast resolve within Ukraine. This encounter could mark a pivotal moment for the Ukraine war. It has highlighted a potential realignment of US foreign policy that will reverberate far beyond one meeting. Allies now face the prospect of a Washington that is more confrontational with friends than foes, and they are responding with messages of unity and self-reliance. For Ukraine, the stakes of maintaining international support are higher than ever, even as its people stand firmly behind their president's refusal to bow to pressure. And for the United States, the episode raises questions about America's role on the world stage. Will a tougher, transactional stance bring about a quicker peace, or will it weaken the coalition confronting Russian aggression? As of today, the world is watching closely. The Zelensky-Trump-Vance meeting will be remembered as an extraordinary diplomatic drama, one that might influence the trajectory of the war and the future of US-Ukraine relations. In the coming weeks, look for whether cooler heads prevail and the minerals deal and other aid is revived, or if this confrontation leads to a lasting chill. In an ongoing war with global implications, yesterday's White House fireworks have added a new and unpredictable chapter. The broader impact remains to be seen, but one thing is clear: the dialogue between Washington and Kiev has entered a new, more tense phase, and the consequences will unfold on the world stage in real time.